Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Influencers Project. I'm your host, Craig Reynolds. With me today is someone that spent 12 years competing on the top level of BMX racing. He's ranked number 7 all-time in mains made at 174. He has 85 podiums and 30 wins. To say his career was stellar would be an understatement. Since then, he has retired and become one of the most sought-after coaches in the BMX world. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Greg Romero. Greg, how's it going today?
I'm doing well, very, very, very well. Thank you very much for the introduction. That was cool.
Oh man, well, it's truth. You know, for the people that didn't get a chance to compete against Greg, it was a nightmare. Just saying. It was fun. It was fun. He pushed you. He made you get better. And speaking of that, Greg, you were one of the first people that I recall that looked at us as athletes. And you know, everyone talks about when Christoph came over, how he changed the game. But I think you growing up in Northern California with the people you did, you guys were athletes and you trained like athletes as well.
Yeah.
And you spoke of that often when a lot of people didn't want to do that. They just wanted to ride their bike, do sprints, and go to the trails. But your approach was a little bit different. Where did that come from? What was the influence behind that?
Yes, I would say first and foremost, I think training and preparation is obviously key. I think for me, I grew up playing high school sports. So I grew up playing football, and, you know, I saw the benefits of training and preparation there, as well as the emotional and mental side of that. And then I had a mentor who was a former pro, a guy named Cecil Johns, who was also he was really big into bodybuilding. And so I became roommates with him and trained under his tutelage. And, not only did we explore and go in depth in a lot more of being in the gym, I think we were starting to tap into the specificity of training then. Because I would say back in the day, in the early 80s and 90s, a lot of racers were training, but there was a lot of like bodybuilding type stuff, like doing arms, upper body and stuff like that. And despite the fact that my mentor Cecil Johns was a bodybuilder, he was a big adamant of the complete package, but not only physically, but more importantly, emotionally, mentally.
Gotcha. So you guys were actually tapping into the psychological aspects of sport.
Yeah, and as well as the spiritual side, really. I mean, and not from a religious sense, just being grateful for the opportunity of being someone that could influence others. Someone who is grateful for, the earth that you walk on, the air that you breathe, the skies that you see, you know what I'm saying? So, so just practicing gratitude, practicing service and really, truly, transcending self, right? Because I really think at the end of the day, performance, as much as we think about it, we tend to focus on the physical side. We tend to focus on the emotional and mental side as well. Like emotional IQ is starting to become a big term, especially during, COVID 2020, 2021. And so, the ability to have an aim and a goal, and the ability, more importantly, to transcend self, doing it more for yourself. Obviously, doing it for yourself is important, but transcending that and doing it, for your family, for your community, for your world. I was thinking about the other day, Craig, I found that when all those times that you talked about all these wins I had, I was telling a client the other day that I never won on accident, and more times than not, when I did win, I was in the right headspace of doing it more than myself. I was doing it for family. I was doing it for people that looked up to me, for people that I helped. So when I discovered that, that's when I had the epiphany where it was like, okay, man, this isn't about me. Right. And so, but yeah, and I would say today, and it's weird. I don't know where we're going with this, but I'll say this. The one thing, being older now, the one thing that I'm finding as I reflect yesterday is the struggle, or how can I say this? The toggling of operating from the ego as opposed to the heart, right? Because we all know there's a kind side to us. We all know that there's an egoic side to us where we want to do it for ourselves, that we want to build up this strong masculine, or if you're a female, an alpha male, an alpha female, if you will, and try to, and do things out of serving our identity is actually more unresourceful than just to do it out of the heart, right? And so maybe perhaps that's probably the spiritual side that I was tapping into in my early 20s.
Well, your early 20s were ridiculously fast. You were fast your entire career. Let's go back before that. When you were an amateur, I think you were riding for Boss. Was that the time that you were living with Cecil, or is that when you first met him? And how was your amateur career? And when did like the switch hit for you, where you went from fast local amateur to I'm winning mains at big nationals, and I'm
Yeah,
in I'm in the title hunt for amateur titles.
I would say in a nutshell, majority of my younger amateur career from like 8 years old till, I don't know, 16, or just really just 8 years old till about 14, I struggled a lot, right? Like I just didn't, I think I was a little bit more of a heavy set kid. I battled with the syndrome of not being good enough, not being fit enough. I was a little bit on the heavy side. Girls would tease me for my big butt, but in hindsight, I think they kind of liked it. So I misinterpreted that. Like I really struggled of just not being good enough, right? And so racing as an amateur was really hard for me, and it wasn't until when I joined a team called Boss, and Cecil Johns was on there. When I was, imagine a little 13-year-old kid who jumped on a team that was full of people of color and diversity. We had, two or three big black guys that looked like they were like, NFL linebackers and running backs. And we had like a true Indian dude, myself being of Spanish and Filipino descent. And then, a couple crazy white dudes from East Oakland. Right. And so, I was thrown into the mix of this team that was just, like the Bad News Bears, but in a good way bad, right? Like they were
outstanding team. Outstanding.
Yeah.
Like for those of you that don't know, Boss was this amazing brand that
Yeah.
sponsored the heaviest of heavy hitters out of Northern California. And they were a threat. Every single one of them were dangerous on the bike. If you're on the gate with any one of them, you better bring your A game because they were super fast.
Yeah. So, I had a big influence from then, but I struggled to be a part of that team as well. Right. Like I was a young kid. I was still dealing with, I'm not good enough. And then, finally it was like, I entered high school, started lifting, and, came across several different football coaches who were like in the military. They're very militant style. And I was like, I can get with this because, some of my teammates were very militant style as well. And so, I used high school sports and the discipline that I received from that, as well as the physical, emotional, mental exposure that I got from that. And then I was able to take that, get back into BMX after high school. And then that's when things kind of like clicked and took off.
Did you take a break when you were in high school then? Or did you
Yeah, I did.
step away from it?
I would take like a half season off. I would still dabble in racing. I didn't fully retire, if you will, for the season. I would just, take maybe, the football season off. So I'd be off for like 6-7 months, but then I would show up for the grands after football season was over. And but yeah, so yeah, I would say that for most, for a lot of athletes, I think high school sports, if you're a parent that's listening, I think if you're a younger kid that's listening, doing other sports is very, very, it's helpful, right? It's very beneficial because I think you can get more exposure in terms of learning your strengths and weaknesses.
It's a well-rounded approach, right?
Yes.
I played soccer in high school as well, and
Oh, cool.
it was so much fun how it all tied together.
Yeah.
I would go from being this. I was a left forward.
Left
They
forward.
they would just chip the ball up, and I'd go chase it down. I was the fastest dude in the district, in the conference, in the region. So they didn't even have to do much, but they would put someone back there, and I'd have to navigate around the defender, but it would also open up the other part of the field. So then you're thinking about this in terms of how do I get around all of these things, but then you tie that into racing bikes as well. It's very similar. I'm in the pack. What's my line through this corner?
Yeah. Now I'm curious. What did soccer? What was the one thing that you got from soccer that helped you with your BMX racing?
I would say that it increased my conditioning overall because of all the running that we did. And then that
Ah,
helped me throughout the day last a little bit longer because we were there from 6 in the morning till midnight. We were there
yeah.
all day. So I think that helped create a better base for me. It was easy for me to go back because I was always so fast as a runner that I could just go sprint. But as well as I do, you got to be able to repeat that sprint, right?
Yeah.
So I think that helped my BMX career for a little
Right.
while.
It helped you from a physical and potentially emotional, mental endurance, but it also gave you the ability to understand that repeatability was important. Because
Yes.
soccer, it's kind of the same thing. Like if you're a left forward, you're at center field when the team's playing defense, right? So you're just kind of
Yes.
floating.
Yes.
You're
You're
floating, and
recovering.
then you're
Yeah.
floating, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, the ball's coming midfield. It's time to do another effort and bring the
Yes.
ball to the
Yes.
offensive side. Got it.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I like that team aspect of it as well. BMX, we raced it as individuals. We were on a team,
Yeah.
but when you're on the gate, you're by yourself. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to think about the spacing of the field. Like, where is everybody and where should they be? If I'm running up the field, someone needs to be coming in to the center box so I could chip the ball in. So you're
Yeah.
kind of having to have this outer experience in this zone around you to know, like, okay, this is how this is working. This is how it's breaking down. The defense is here. Someone should be here. It's fun.
Right.
So
Yeah.
much fun. So much fun. So let's go into your pro career. Um, you learned a lot of training going up into that. You had a nice base. What was the mental side of that for you? Because once we turned pro, man, I wasn't even ready for the mental side of it. I'll be the first to admit it. It was a different world for me.
Yeah, I think for me, my early part of my career was probably the better part of my career. Um, just for the quick backstory, when I first turned rookie pro, I had a lot of momentum and some good talent, physically, and also a lot of developed skills on the bike to do really well to make main events um, in the pro class, and I think
Yeah, you made a lot of them,
immediately.
174. That's a whole bunch.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was able to get like wins right off the hop, as a rookie pro, and it's crazy. Like, if you look at that list of people who've made mains and who's won, it's quite amazing how many people have less than a handful of wins. It's really hard to win in our sport.
Blows me
Um,
away when I look at the wins on some of the other riders that are
yeah.
legends in our sport, and you're like, they won three? That's it?
Yeah, I think those numbers are a little bit
Amazing.
skewed because I
I,
think I think what they did was they only counted the national day, but which would be on a Sunday. Back in the day, they used to have nationals, but the national
mhm.
day was only the pros would race both days. But for some reason, the statistics they didn't show the Saturday race, so maybe I don't know. Maybe those
I
numbers
don't.
need to
Yeah, I
be
don't know
corrected.
how accurate it all is, but it's got to be close. It's got to be.
Yeah, I think
Wolf
like
did
it
a really
looks like
good job
Stu
with that.
Thompson got like 10 wins, but it doesn't make sense. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
anyways,
exactly.
so I would say like for me, what I learned, I don't know what the question was, but basically when I
Yeah,
first turned
how
rookie,
did you take your mental strength turning into as you turned pro?
yeah, so I didn't really, it was weird. I would say I kind of like went through the motions as a rookie pro, and I went basically off of the vapors of just having momentum coming off a good rookie year, a good amateur career, or an amateur year, and and some really good talent. Like I had a good start, I had a good gait, and in BMX, if you have a good first straight, you could be competitive right off the hop. And I felt like I had one of the better first straights, especially in the pro class as a rookie. But the thing is that got me, Craig, was as I was floating and just kind of going through the motions. Um, I learned quickly, complacency can hurt you. I got complacent towards the end of my first year. And then the second year, I actually struggled. So that's where I was actually forced to like, okay, dude, it's time to tap into the emotional, mental side. It's time to create goals and aims. And, the second year was probably one of the more, um, it, I didn't win as much as my rookie year, but it was, as far as growth was concerned, integrating the emotional and mental side and understanding like fighting through the struggle was really big for me. And I would say that that's even more helpful in 25 years later down the road. um, and yeah, it was
Because
hard
these are
because
things
I,
that you can share, right? These are the things that you can share with your clients now, right?
yeah, like my sophomore year of rookie racing, I'm sorry, of my, in the beginning of my career, I wasn't making mains like I was in my rookie career. And there was already younger people coming up that were, that were better than me, I thought. And so I just had to start training and training and training. And the one thing that I learned that was such a struggle was I was training every week, month in, month out. And like for the majority of the summer, I still struggled. So it was hard for me to understand putting in all this hard work of training and not seeing the results. I think for me, that was like one of the biggest things. And I would say in today's life lessons, that's like saving money every day, saving a penny every day and not seeing your savings account grow, right? So I learned the concept of what is now known today as a book called The Slight Edge, understanding the value of compound interest, just doing little things every day that doesn't seem to make a difference, but over time it compounds and it certainly does make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So that year, that was a big learning lesson for me. It was like, okay, well, dude, just do what you got to do every day. Don't look for the quick gratification, look for the long-term aim. So in terms of like, the emotional mental, the emotional IQ side, that's what I learned.
That is a very good life lesson because that can be applied across the board, right?
Across the board, man. Yeah.
Yes. I noticed when we were invited to the Olympic Training Center to do the training center for the testing for the cycling team,
Oh yeah.
that was a fun time. But I always noticed that you were with the coaches, chatting with the coaches and talking with the coaches about training and fitness and what they do. And it was fascinating to watch it. I watched it from afar.
Yeah.
And I knew then that that was the path that you were going down because it was
Hmm.
something obviously knowing now and hearing
Yeah.
this now, that was what you were doing initially. But I could see it. I'm like, that would be a good fit for Greg. I can see it. I can totally see it.
That was a
And now
pretty,
that's,
that was, yeah.
that
Go
was a
ahead.
fun time. That was really fun. It was hard, but it was fun.
Yeah.
Um, Now that you're an Olympic level coach, you've sent some riders to the Olympics. You are sought after, one of the premier guys, as far as I'm concerned. Talk to me about how that came about.
That's really interesting. So I would say very easily and effortlessly, I didn't know anything other than BMX, and I needed to look past my career, and the low hanging fruit was coaching. But I would say it was also in my DNA. Like even today, like I
Mhm.
like they have all these different esoteric studies of how to learn about your DNA and who you are. And at the end of the day, I'm born to be a mentor, right? It's in my DNA. It's to share the wisdom. It's to share my the
Dude,
learning, sharing the
you
learnings.
you shared with me at the end of my career. I had switched over to ride for standard. I was on a bike that was still a little too small. We were in Sarasota practice. We're doing gates, and you go, Craig, you're not getting over the front of your bike enough. I was like, what? Where'd that come from? But you know what? You're right. Oh, thanks, dude. I appreciate
You're
that.
you're probably like, thanks for your unsolicited advice.
But it was, but you know, but it was, but you were accurate, right? And I appreciated that friendship, and I appreciated
Yeah.
that advice because it's no matter
And
how
we
good
were,
we are, we can always get better, right? Or we can always
yeah,
reset and relearn,
yeah.
even when we're at our best. But I appreciated that, and I've been meaning to tell you
Even
that for years.
that's funny. I don't, thanks for sharing that. I don't remember that. And
Yep,
and it's funny, like, and we were competing with each other, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the thing. Like when I got into coaching, I was actually starting to coach Mike Day, who I was already competing with. I was in the eighth, I was in the seventh, eighth inning of my career, but I was already helping out Mike Day. And of course, it was like it just came natural to me. But and I would be lying if it wasn't for the aim of like going to the Olympic Games and helping him,
Hmm.
right? Like I wanted to be a part of that Olympic movement. And so I would be lying if I didn't say that. And I would be lying if I didn't see the value or benefit of being a part of that in terms of launching a coaching career. So yeah, I developed rapport with Mike Day. We had a really good friendship and we had a really good run. And so, but naturally, I had no problems helping out other people such as yourself. So it totally made sense. And it also gave me the ability to transcend myself, right? To give back to the sport, help people thrive, help people experience their potential and help them sustain it. I mean, that's pretty much my motto today. Help people thrive, experience their potential and sustain it. And it doesn't really matter if it's BMX, life and business, or anything else in between. That's pretty much the values that I live within in terms of serving others. So I would say like coaching just came natural to me. And yeah, as far as becoming an Olympic coach, I always thought about how could we perform physically, emotionally, mentally at a higher level than we are now as a BMX athlete species, if you will. And so, yeah, that's pretty much how that went.
And with that transition, did you find it hard to stop being the athlete and helping the athlete at that time?
Yes and no. I would be lying if I didn't say there was a part of me that said, oh, you know what, I still want to compete. But at the same time, I was seeing more value in helping and serving others for some reason. It was really weird. And really honestly, I was living vicariously through my athletes and seeing them win. If they won, then I won, right? Like right. Yeah. And even then I would say as a coach, you have to be careful with that, because all of a sudden you're starting to make the coaching about you, right? So that's right. Part of the, that's in the beginning, I talked about toggling between the heart and the ego. The heart is about serving others. The ego is about serving the identity of the ego. And so I would find even, after the success of a couple Olympic games, that I was starting to coach out of the ego, like trying to serve myself and get accolades. It's like, dude, no, that's not serving anybody. It's not even serving myself. Right. It's not even serving the identity of the ego. So I had to toggle back and operate from the heart. And I do find, most awesome and great things happen through operating through the heart.
Right. You get the accolades that way, right? Even without having to focus on it. They come naturally because you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. Doing the right thing, right? You see it all the times. You watch the Grammys, you watch Academy Awards, you watch people who win at the highest levels, and they're just like, dude, I wasn't even trying to win that award. I was just trying to be the best who I can be. And more times than not, they're doing it for others, right? If they're a parent, they're doing it for their kids. If they have loved ones, they're doing it for those, so right.
It's awesome to hear that. I've said for a long time, the saying is, it takes a village to raise a child. I just think it takes a village, period. Whether that's your neighbors or your family, it takes everybody to exist together in a positive light. Like my neighbors here in my neighborhood are amazing, and we would do anything for them and vice versa. And to me, that's what it's all about, right? Is being here for each other and everyone on that's whatever level that may be.
That's right. It's funny that you say that. I have an awesome chiropractor, and we talk about spiritual things all the time. And I've been seeing him for about just over 10 years. I don't know, 40 times a year. And, the one thing that, we've actually grown together emotionally, mentally, spiritually. But the cool thing that he reminded me on was the 5 things. And the main one that you just touched on was serving others, right? Serving others in your world. And your world doesn't have to be the entire globe. It just means your community, right? Your neighborhood, anybody that you come across emotionally, physically, or mentally, right? In fact, I'm looking at a sign above my door right now. It's by a former highly spiritual yoga named Paramahansa Yogananda, he's not alive today, but he has a spiritual enlightenment center over here in North County, San Diego, in Encinitas, called Swami's. And he has a saying here: change yourself and you have done your part in changing the world. And so, what does that have to do with the community? What does that have to do with serving others? It's all about just changing your immediate, if your goal is if you want to create change in the world, it starts with you, right? If you want to create change in your community, your world, really at the end of the day, that's your world. But even to chunk down a little bit, if you will, it's all about that change has to come from within first.
Right.
Is
that something that you coach to your athletes as well?
Yes. Yes and no. It's very, I would say most athletes that come to me, Listen, most people that want help from me, it's usually out of an external want, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
No.
But then eventually the progressions of the learnings, yes, definitely leads down to finding the joy within, right? Because I would say most human beings they're either going in two directions, moving away from pain or moving towards pleasure. And athletes that come for help are usually probably in some pain, and they want to move towards pleasure, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And so, the thing is that most of these athletes don't realize that what they're trying to have and the result of what they get from having that, which is usually being somebody, they just have to be that person, right? So for example, there's
So good. Yeah.
right, so there's a concept called be, do, and have. Being, doing, and having. Most people believe they have to have this in order to do that so they can be that, right? So I'll use a really funny, I think of like drug dealers, right? It's like, oh, I have to have the money. And I think of the movie Scarface, Al Pacino. Once I get the money, then I have the power, then I have everything I want, right? It's like, okay, well, once you have everything you want, what will you feel? Who will you be?
Right.
Right. And it's gonna be like, well, I'm a person of empowered, I'm abundant, I'm empowered, I'm I'm joyous, I'm happy. And it's like, okay, well, then all of a sudden you believe that you have to have this, you have to win these races, you have to get this money, you have to have a car, you have to have this house, you have to have this education in an effort to validate who you want to be. And the secret really, Craig, at the end of the day, is just be that person now.
Right.
And it's so hard for our ego to wrap around that concept, right?
Right.
Just be that person. I mean, as human beings, the potential is enormous. There really is, truly is no limitations. And the fact is that you have all the resources to be the person that you want to be. So just be that.
Right. We don't necessarily have to have this thing in order to be this person. You can just be that person.
That's right.
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 That's
That's right.
good coaching for sure.
You look at Buddhist monks, right? They have absolutely nothing, right? And all they do is they meditate, hours on days, on months, on years on end. And their whole premise is that living is suffering. No, I don't want anyone to read that as a limiting belief, but the fact is the suffering part is really truly is just wanting something, right? Moving away from pain, moving towards pleasure is a want in itself. Therefore, it's suffering itself. Like if you want dessert, you're suffering. But that's not to be looked at as a negative way. It's just part of life. It's just part of living. And so, these guys who are able to just meditate and operate without the need of having anything, they're just being.
Right.
They're just being, man. And so
It's like
sometimes
a level
it's just
of impermanence, right? Like nothing's permanent.
ooh, yeah, there you go.
We used to see these monks that used to come visit this I forgot the name of the location back in Chicago, and they would come in and make these big elaborate beautiful sand like sculptures. Not even a sculpture, but it was like a pattern on the floor, and it was beautiful, and it would take them forever to do it. And
Yeah.
then they'd take a broom and broom it off. They're like, what did you just do? And they're like, nothing's permanent. Like it's beautiful, but guess what? It's over. It's done. And they would
Yeah.
wipe it off the floor. You're like, it took you forever to do that. And that to me speaks to that hanging on feeling, and that's that ego of I gotta have it and I gotta have this. Like really, but you've got the
Right.
memory at least, right?
And I like that. Like you said, the ego have to have it, and then we hold on to it because we don't want it to change. Like it's like having that glorious moment. It's like, oh, I just want to put it in a capsule and hold on to it forever. And you're right, man. I mean,
Right.
Things are always evolving. Things are always Things are always changing, rather. And we live in a world of impermanence.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. It's always changing, no doubt. I love the words that you've shared with me today. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're a very, very busy man. But if someone would like to get a hold of you for coaching, speaking time, whatever it may be, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, that's a great question. How do you get a hold of me? I guess it
You're
comes
pretty
down
elusive,
to,
dude. I've known you for decades, and sometimes it's hard for me to get a hold of you. And I'm like, gosh, I gotta send Greg a message, but
well, please
now I
forgive me.
got him.
Well, please forgive me. The one thing that for me, I'm kind of a weirdo. I don't have notifications turned on my phone, right? Like you were hitting me up through Facebook. Oh no, Instagram.
Instagram, yeah.
I'll go 24 hours. I go in these weird spurts, like, maybe I'm feeling it. And then all of a sudden I'm like on Instagram posting and participating for 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'll go in dark mode. And all of a sudden, I won't open up the app for 24 hours, 24 hours at a time. And so I don't have any notifications on because I get easily distracted. Yeah, it's hard for me to operate when I'm being distracted. And so, but yeah, it's not hard, BMX coach everywhere, at BMX coach on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way.
Because you're not just doing BMX now as well, right? Are you doing some road coaching too, or training programs?
Yeah, not a whole lot of road. I'm still doing a lot of BMX coaching.
Yep.
And it's funny because I would say that a lot of the BMX athletes, they don't realize it. It's really life coaching with a BMX wrapper around it.
Right.
But yes, I do. I actually have been. I have been doing coaching for executives and business people and people outside of BMX.
Nice.
My background as of late, I became certified as a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, and also mental and emotional release therapy. So basically, what does that mean? I just help people become successful. I help people get over their bullshit. I help people get past their baggage. I help people gain clarity. I help people become congruent with who they are. And that way they can jump on the path and not get derailed and nail the aims and nail all the goals on the way to the success or fulfillment that they want.
Well, I have no doubt that you will be wildly successful at that as well. Just from knowing you from all these years, I've never known you to not be successful. So,
Well, I
Greg,
appreciate
thank
that.
you. Oh man, absolutely. Thank you. And I appreciate your time today, for coming on and sharing some of your incredible knowledge, dude. That was great.
That was good. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and we'll chat soon.
Absolutely. If you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe there as well. Have a fantastic day. Greg, be good. I'll talk with you soon.
Sounds great.